Greetings everyone, I'm TJBChris. Welcome back to the channel. I'm in front of the camera again. Who knew? You won't see too much of me though, you'll mostly get to see these beauties because I know that's why you're here. You're not here to see me, you're here to see these wonderful beasts. And it's my favorite month of the year. It is SepTANDY. SepTANDY, where people all over the internet shine the spotlight on all things Tandy, especially Tandy Radio Shack computers, and I am no exception. But TJBChris, you're probably asking yourself, isn't it always SepTANDY in your house, like every month of the year? And my answer to that would be, yes. Yes, it is. Thank you for noticing. Well, it is in fact SepTANDY here every month of the year with all the great machines, the ones you see before you, the ones behind me, the ones you can't see off camera. I, in fact, use SepTANDY to really drill down and highlight particular things of interest to me, mainly, that I think you might also like that relate to Tandy Radio Shack computers. And I've used it as an opportunity to embrace my newfound love of thematic content, and this year is no exception. Just as last year we did Bigly Tandy, my focus on applications for the 8-inch systems. Check out the card. This year I'm going to be focusing on a series I'm calling TJBChris's TEC. That's TJBChris's Tandy Education Connections, and we're really focused on the connections. I'm going to be focusing on educational systems, Tandy's version and view of classroom education using their computer systems in the early 1980s, mainly focused on the TRS-80 line. We're not really going to get into MS-DOS or anything like that. But I'm really going to be focusing on those early 80s educational offerings from Tandy Corporation. And there's a few different network topologies we'll talk about, a couple of which we'll demo, and there's a lot of great stuff in store for you. I really hope you enjoy tuning in, following along, and maybe sharing with me some memories that you may have of running into these machines in your classrooms as you were coming up. Before we get into the demos and specific networking hardware and software, I want to talk a little bit about Tandy's role in education. Those of you who view computer history through the rather myopic Apple lens will go, well, TJBChris, there was only one computer in schools, and that's Apple. Apple had all the schools and all the computers and all the computers and all the schools. And I would tell you that yes, Apple was very prevalent, and Steve Jobs knew how to market those machines to education, and he made it very much in their best interest to do so. My computers in my school were, in fact, after the TRS-80s were retired, the single computer lab of TRS-80s we had that were retired, were in fact Apple IIs. And Apple IIs were everywhere. I have an Apple IIe, which is not in the room here with me, because the 2 is the machine that made me want a computer in the first place. And we couldn't afford that crap. So, Color Computer 3 to the rescue there. But that said, my school did have TRS-80 Model 3s and 4s, comprised of a network, and I did get to use it a couple of times. Tandy computers could be found in education at all levels. They could be found at the elementary level, at the secondary level, at the post-secondary level, colleges and the like, and also in outside of formal education, such as adult studies and other things like that. In fact, there were a lot of adult programs, library programs, computer user groups, and otherwise that used TRS-80 computers either in their heyday or as hand-me-downs from other institutions to give people access to microcomputers, teach them how to use them, and even set up some connectivity to them to take advantage of the offerings. The Tandy Educational Division really got it started in 1979, and actually first had its appearance in the 1981 catalog with a splash page and a couple of offerings, including a network controller, one of which we'll cover this evening. In addition to hardware and connectivity solutions, Tandy Corporation also offered a plethora of software in the computer-assisted instruction, the courseware, and in student and classroom management to help teachers along. In fact, they even had software such as Pilot to help teachers create their own instructional content without having to know how to program the computers. They offered educational services to support schools, institutions that had these machines, etc. Like I said, all the way up through post-secondary, a SUNY school by where I grew up actually had, in the early 90s, a computer lab full of Tandy 2500 machines. And Radio Shack was not quiet about its educational presence in its catalogs. Its offerings were always front and center, so much so that in the late 1980s, educational catalogs and educational offerings were broken out into their own separate educational catalogs with a small advertising section in their computer catalogs, but with a much wider array of product and services available from the educational catalog. The basic philosophy of Radio Shack computers and their educational program was getting the most out of the computing resources you have, and that is using a lot of cheaper machines and maybe one or two more expensive machines to then provide a customized, tailored, but easy to manage solution for propagating student software to different machines, getting coursework back from students, making it available, sharing printers and like that. Having 16 or 17 cheap machines, such as a diskless Model 3 here, connected to one disk full, one really decked out, more RAM host system, made a lot more sense from a financial standpoint. In fact, even in TRS-80 microcomputer news, the reprints of which I have right here, and this is the 1982 year, which is when a lot of tonight's discussion really kind of focuses, you can find cost breakdowns for running different versions of Tandy's networking software and what that would cost schools versus if they were just to deck out the room in 17 or 18 of the most expensive systems or systems with disk drives, right? By focusing on all-in-one single unit systems with few to no peripherals at the student end and saving all of the expensive good stuff, cassette recorders, line printers, disk drives, for the teachers and the host where it's kind of more closely guarded, you minimize the risk of vandalism, theft, and other things, or even just accidents. Kids do stuff. They bring Cokes to class after lunch and dump them into your cassette recorders. At least you just have to worry about the keyboards now, right? In fact, as it relates to Tandy Education, it's worth pointing out that the Model 4 was in the catalog until the 1990 catalog. All the sources I can find cite one reason and one reason only, and that is education. The Model 4 was the hub to Tandy's last incarnation of TRS-80 based networking and could not have any other computer as a host. I'll talk about that briefly. But that kept the Model 4 in the catalog, at least according to many folks that I've talked to, until well past its prime. If you think about it in computing terms, this machine was released in 1983 and was still being listed in the catalog for the 90 catalog, and by all accounts could still be had after that until Tandy got out of the biz. When we're looking at the hardware aspects of Tandy's TRS-80 classroom offerings, we're really looking at 4 different pieces of hardware over 3 different network topologies. The network topologies are cassette-based, as is seen here, and that's going to be the focus of tonight's video. Then we have a serial port-based topology, and then finally we have what was called Network 4, which is an even faster kind of derivation of the serial port topology, but was actually a version of Corvus Systems OmniNet. Unfortunately, other than a few Model 4 student stations with Corvus cards built into them, I don't know how much Network 4 software survives. Because it is Corvus OmniNet, it is technically, I guess, compatible with other implementations, though nobody I know of has tried it. And as far as I know, the software and hardware outside of a few Model 4s is kind of lost to time. I'm hoping that if that's not the case, that somebody finds those and actually does a nice job bringing it to light. That's what's happened so far with the other network components, and we'll talk about that as we go through this series. With that in mind, we're really going to be focusing on the first 2 paradigms. The cassette-based offering, as you can see here, and the serial port-based offering in a future video. Of course, no demonstration would be complete without a focus on not only the hardware, but the software. So we're going to take a look at some of the great educational offerings that Radio Shack had, both from the serial port and cassette side, and we'll be taking a look at some of the additional functionality that's offered to us by the Radio Shack networking offerings of the 1980s. With that in mind, let's discuss the first topology. Oh, hello, TJBChris popping up from behind this network setup to talk to you about it. We're going to talk about cassette-based networking, and this, the Network 2 box. This box actually was property of a school district. I don't know where CUSD is, but it is apparently Campbell Union School District. So if you worked at Campbell Union, I've got your network box and you ain't getting it back. The Network 2 box and the Network 1 box are almost functionally identical, except that the Network 1 box only supports Model 1 cassette speeds, that's 500 baud. Therefore, it only supports the Model 1 or Model 3s running in low speed mode for Model 3 Basic or Level 1 Model 3 Basic, which was like Level 1 on the Model 1. Other than the baud rate switch here, there's really not much difference between the Network 1 and the Network 2. The Network 1 could first be found in the first 1981 Radio Shack computer catalog, and Network 2 found its way in the revised 1981 catalog. Okay, a closer look at the Network 2, and as you can see, we have a power switch, which does what a power switch does. It's like a spider pig. And then we have a mode switch, which determines which mode we're going to be using, either classroom multiplex mode from the host, or input from the cassette recorder here, ACCR81. We have an input selector switch that I'll get into, but the input selector is for selecting which student station can send back to the host. We'll demonstrate that. We have a power supply here, which is actually, of course, not a factory one. I do have a factory power supply, but it's from an early Model 1 and has the plastic outer shell on the DIN connector, which does not fit in the Network 2 interface. So I have this that I bought. Ian Maverick sells the kit sans transformers, so you just buy the kit, he sends it to you, and you buy the transformers and wire it up. Mine did not come with the cables. He now includes cables to make it even easier for you. So if you're looking for a reliable Model 1 replacement supply, do give Ian Maverick a look. I'll put his website in the video description. Back to the network controller, there's also the baud rate switch that I was so lovingly encircling earlier. And there are a set of LEDs that are marked Remote Unit Active. And this is very important for the instructor to be able to keep track of which student stations are ready to receive a program. And to get people like me who are screwing around, it's kind of a tattle on me, so they can be like, dude, C-load this thing so I can start. You'll see all of this when we do our demo. Let's take a walk around back. And taking a look around back, you can see that we have the place where the magic happens. We have on the bottom on the left here, we have all of the input. We have the power input. We have the host, the CPU, and we have the cassette recorder, our trusty CCR81. We then have not 1, not 2, not 9, but 16 student station connections. This controller originally came with all of the cabling needed to run it, so you didn't have to go buy additional cables. You could just connect them together. Additionally, these units could be daisy-chained, so you could really make quite a large pod-style network with multiple controllers, each feeding different sets of computers. Very cool. The cables here are straight through, pin 1 to pin 1, pin 2 to pin 2, etc., on both ends of the cable. Like I said, the controller came with them, but mine did not, so I had to make these cables. And really, the connection is really straightforward. The host machine, or CPU, connects into the CPU jack, and then past my whiskey to the back of our host machine is our cable connected to the cassette port. And then back here on one of the student stations, same kind of thing. We've got another cable going over here, and there are 2 more. In fact, we have that Model 4 at the end, and we have this Model 4 over here, which I'm going to plug in, and we're going to take a look at how this thing works. So that is the TRS-80 Network 2 setup. The Network 1, again, would be identical except for the baud rates. One last thing I forgot to mention is that the added baud rate actually allows not only Model 3 and 4 machines to work with it, but also added compatibility for the color computer. And that's where, in this video, I actually had to call it audible. This video was supposed to use color computer hardware in place of the Model 3 and 4 machines because I have 2 Coco 3s, a Coco 1, and a Coco 2. However, I could not get them to talk reliably, and knowing that the Models 3 and 4 are working reliably, my initial guess is that this has something to do with changes to the cassette circuitry for later Cocos. All but my Color Computer 1 are 1985 or later color computers made late in the run. And I mean, it stands to reason, and this is just a guess, that cassette recorder technology and auto level control have progressed enough that by the time those machines came around, they didn't just need to scream out the cassette signal as these machines apparently do. So I don't know that that's true. If you do, let me know in the comments. But I really wanted to make this a Coco video and finally just had to punt because I just couldn't get it to work. Had the room all set up and everything, and it wouldn't play nice. So anyway, let's get to that demo and see what makes the Network 2 work. A quick lay of the land just so you get an idea from where I'm standing, what I see. And you can see the 4 machines we have involved. But starting with our host, this machine here, this Model 4, the gate array machine with the clustered arrows, is our host. It actually comes with a floppy drive replacement, a Lothrec, and is actually connected to a TRS-IO in the back, which, can I get you? There it is. Anyway, this machine is our host. This machine is connected to the CPU port on the Network 2 controller. To its left, we have another Model 4. This is a non-gate array machine. That's gate array, not Gatorade, like the sports drink. This is a functional disk Model 4. The floppy drives work. There's a floppy controller there. I've held the brake key during startup to override the disk drive, so it will be serving as a diskless cassette station. It has 64K of memory, or in Model 3 mode, 48K. This Model 3 diskless is my originally 16K Model 3, upgraded to 48. See previous videos, card, I think. but it actually does not have disk drives or a disk controller. It does have a ROM in it to be able to boot a Fred, but that is not in use. The Fred's not attached, so it just defaults to BASIC, and that is what it has. By the way, all of these machines are Model 3 BASIC. This final machine is another non-gate array Model 4. This one, while it has floppy drives in it, has been problematic with floppy controllers. So for a long time it has not had a floppy controller connected. These drives are placeholders and parts drives, but they are basically just kind of keep the machine looking good. But when you turn this machine on, it starts up as a cassette Model 3. It's got 64K of RAM. Of course, in Model 3 mode, only 48K usable. So, student station, network 2, student station, host, student station. The first thing we're going to do in this setup is we're going to load a program simultaneously across all 3 machines. I've gone ahead and loaded a bunch of Radio Shack educational software onto drive 3 of my Fred. So here's some of it. The speech is not, I don't know where that came from, but everything else, it's basic programs for the most part. And that's pretty much what the Network 2 was intended to be used for, was basic programs. Some enterprising educators did figure out how to send system tapes down there, and it does work. And you'll kind of see that in a future video. But for your basic purposes for Network 2, it was meant to support BASIC. Okay, so I'm actually going to take the kinetic energy one, and we're going to go do that. First things first, the host here is a Model 4, and this version of LDOS actually runs the Model 4 at 4 megahertz, even though we're in the Model 3 mode. So the very first thing you need to do if you're on a Model 4, especially if you have I/O problems, is set the system to slow, and this is a particular problem with LDOS. The way we do that is with the system slow command. Now that we've accomplished that, and we've agreed that we're going to run the kinetic program, I'm going to type BASIC, and in parentheses high. This tells it to use the high speed for the cassette port. You may have noticed when I showed the power-up screens for the Models 3 and 4 cassette systems, I just pressed enter at the cassette prompt. The default speed is high. I'm now going to load kinetic. Oh, that's because I can't spell. Or at least I can't type. Okay, kinetic is loaded, and now here is where we need to tell the students, hey, every student type cload on your machine and press enter. All right, we're going to type cload, and remember the students can do this, so the teacher doesn't have to walk around and pre-do this. And now we're going to press enter. And you can see light 16 is lit up. It uses the cassette relay control to do that. Now over to the Model 4 over here in our corner here, we're going to see load. Oops, not code, load. And I'm going to push the enter key here. And you see we have another light. Now station 5 is also requesting. So I'm the teacher, and I know someone like me is over at the other machine screwing off on it, probably poking around or whatever I was doing. Hey, TJBChris, stop fooling around and type cload and get with the program. You're holding up the class. Fine, fine, teacher, whatever you say. Here comes the cload. And now, can I get this over there so you can see it? Yes, I can. Okay. All 3 students who bothered to show up for class today are now ready to load, 5, 7, and 16. With everybody ready to load, let's send the program. And this is done by a simple C save. And I'm just going to give it the letter K for the file name. These file names are a single character on these machines. And now, you see we have the flashing stars up in the screen. As I go through the machine, the host is saving it. The Model 3 is also loading it. And the other Model 4 is also loading it. These machines are going to continue to load until the host stops sending it, at which point the program will be done loading, and all the machines will simultaneously turn off their cassette relays. I'm just going to kind of let this sit here and do its thing. You should see the stars stop flashing and the lights on the network controller all go off at the same time. In fact, let's get just the Model 3 into frame. You're just going to have to trust me. So I'm simultaneously loading the program across all the machines. And part of the reason I'm making you sit here and listen to me drivel on is because you're going to go, well, this is slow. Why would you do this? And I would say, well, imagine either trying to herd 16 cats in terms of students into loading, rewinding, running cassette recorders, or before class or during class going from machine to machine and trying to start these and then having to deal with volume errors at one or bad tapes or anything else. This makes it easy for you. Oh, they just all stopped, and you can see all our lights are out. This makes it easy for you, the educator, to distribute a program across all the machines. And now let's start over here at Captain Screw-Off, so that'd be my machine, and give this a run. R-U-N. And we have the kinetic game. Now, if you really want, and you trust a student who's probably not me, you can also run the program here. So now your disk system, it becomes a lesson machine for another student. And we'll run this one. And finally, we'll run this one. And that's really where the Network 2 and the Network 1 really come into play, allowing you to simultaneously send a program to as many TRS-80s as you'd like and make sure that they all get the same program. They only have to be loaded once, and you can even help put your students to work in getting the program there. Now let's take a look at the scenario where perhaps maybe you've got two different students on one lesson and maybe another student on a different lesson. Alright class, today's lessons are going to be split. Some of you are faster than others and are going to be focusing on Boyle's Law, while the rest of you are going to be focusing on your reattempt at doing the titration exercise because you apparently were not paying enough attention in class. So, Captain Screw-Off TJBChris over here, I want you to type C-load right now. And I want you over here, other Screw-Off student, to also type C-load. Alright, now that I see that the two lights are active, I will send the program. Here comes the program. I see you guys are ready to C-load. And here it comes. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
How about you over there at the other one?
Yeah. I'm getting it.
Okay, great. It'll be done shortly. Once they're done, I'm going to ask the rest of the class, that one person left at the Model 3, to type C-load again, and then we're going to talk about Boyle's Law. Okay, now I'm going to load Boyle's Law. All right, and for my star students, I'm going to ask you to type C-load over at the Model 3, and I'm going to send the program over. Are your stars flashing? Uh-huh. Great, I see your student station is lit up. We're ready to go. Now, planning stupidity on my part, folks. If I was smart, I'd have put the host next to the thing to go reinforce the fact that the teacher here, host, would be looking at the console here. It's how the room evolved, don't ask. But we are, in fact, loading the program. And meantime, once it's done, if Captain McSmarty here going on to Boyle's Law has another friend, they could also sit at this Model 4 gate array, so long as they are not me, because I would screw around with it. Once the stars stop flashing and the light goes off, you'll be able to run this program. Just type run. Oh, see, there you go. Lights off. Star stopped. Run. You too. Give it a run. The great thing about a lot of these Radio Shack programs, they disable the brake key. One of the great things about these machines is when they supported the ability to disable the brake key. So once you get in here, students can't break out of the program without pressing reset. So they can't exit out, look at the code, and screw with the lesson. And now what we have is a lab of students all working on different programs, or at least some of them, allowing different students to work at their own pace and sometimes on entirely different lessons. Or in the situation of a shared school computer lab, maybe on a free period, one of you comes in to work on one thing, two more on another, and the teacher and the students can coordinate together. But wait, there's more. Network 2 doesn't only just send pre-recorded educational courseware to student machines, it also allows teachers to send example code to students, and allows students to send that code back, or other things like text documents, back to the host in order to be saved on a disk or printed or whatever. So let's take a look at an example of sending a basic program down to all the machines. Alright students, today we're talking about loops in basic programming, and today we're going to write a loop that counts to 50 and we're going to print it out to the screen. This is the fundamental 101 of basic programming, and if you don't know how loops work, y'all going to flunk my class. So I'm going to send you a program and then we're going to modify that program to make it do some additional things. Alright, let's do that now. I'm going to type this program in. I want you all to type C-load on your machines and press enter, and I will send the program down as soon as I type it in. Or actually, I'd probably load it from cassette, but I'm just for the purposes of this example, we're going to type it in. Thanks. Love, Chris. All right, students, here it comes. You see how fast that loaded? You all have the program. I'd like you to run that for me and see what happens. Okay, now I want you to modify this program. Take a look at it. You'll see that it is a simple for loop with a count to 10, and we're going to print text. Now, for every number 1 through 10, I want you to run another loop that prints "Hello, you rummy buzzard" 2 times, maybe 5 times. You tell me. Show me how to do that and send it back to me. Let the first one of you that's done raise your hand. Teacher, I got it. Okay, Brainiac, send it up. Let's see what you've got. I want you to type C save, but don't push enter yet. Alright, I see by the imaginary label on your station that you're number 15, so I'm going to just adjust this dial to select your station. That way my host computer can hear what your computer has to say. Alright, I'm now typing cload. I'm going to need you to send that program push enter on your csave command now. I see I have the program coming and it has come in. Let's take a look at what you sent. This is an excellent example of a beginning nested loop. That's what we call this. This is a nested loop. I see you're going to print a number, and then you're going to print "Hello, you rummy buzzard" 5 times, and then you're going to print a number again, the next number in the sequence, and you're going to do this 10 times and 5 rummy buzzards. Let's see if it works. And it certainly looks like it does. And this is where you get the gold star, trophy, whatever it is they give for being good at computers. When I was in school, that wasn't much. One last thing I want to try. I think it was a website, but I can't remember. I read that the Network 1, allegedly, when the selector switch was set to a student station, as this one is, that if that station did a C save, other students, other machines that weren't the host could see it and therefore take a look at other students' work. And this, in a way, makes sense, given how this works and how it multiplexes the host signals out to, from this machine here, out to each of the students in the Model 4 over there. But I'm wondering, is the reverse true? So we're going to try that. I'm going to save from this Model 3, which is selected, and we know the host will get it because it's already gotten it. The question is, next to the host is this other student station. Will this machine get the program as well? If what I read is true, then both the host and the student station should see the program because it is selected by the knob over here on the Network 2. I don't know that that's a two-way street, though, so I guess, I don't know. I'm betting that maybe it will see it, but let's see. If it doesn't work that way, then the student station won't see it, and that means that, little cheaty McCheatface over there can't just watch for somebody else's transmission and pick it up and then modify it a bit and put their name on it. And I'd imagine you'd want to avoid that, right? I mean, Lord knows children are the most honest beings on the planet and would never cheat, right? Right? All right, I realize this is going to be kind of hard to see and a bit of a pain, but here's what I'm going to do. Student station cload, host cload, and I'm going to run csave, S here again, and let's see who gets it. Oh, just the host. You see there's stars here. It stopped loading. Nothing over there. Just for the sake of trying it again, I'm going to try my Model 4 over in the corner here. All right, this Model 4 is not the host. I'm now going to type cload on it. Okay, and now you can see that we have both stations still calling because the other student station is calling. And now I'm going to csave it, and I'm going to cload again on the host here, C-L-O-A-D, just to see if that was a fluke. Now we're going to csave A. Okay. Student station is done, the Model 3. The host got the file. Model 4 to its left did not, is still waiting. And the lights are going to give it away because you can see they're both still calling. The Model 4 over here did not get it either, which means at least with the Network 2, or at least with my Network 2, if a student sends back to the host, the other stations cannot see it. Interesting. That's going to do it for the first in my series of SepTANDY videos, TJBChris's Tandy Education Connections, or TJBChris's TEC. my series of videos on Radio Shack, its educational offerings, and particularly its educational network topologies and hardware. I really have enjoyed doing this. Believe me, I had more planned, but sadly, I already had to call an audible on using the Cocos for this particular video. It just wasn't meant to be, but the show must go on. And this whole series almost didn't happen. I had an 11th hour breakthrough stroke of luck, and was able to get everything working, and I was into September already when that happened. So we're running on a little shorter time than I thought I was going to have for this. I've been planning this for months. That said, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any feedback or answers to anything I may have been vague about or not known about, please let me know in the comments. I would also be very curious to hear if you have encountered this network topology, or these machines in your educational settings, or even the newer Tandy MS-DOS machines like the 2500s, the Tandy 1000s. They were everywhere. Radio Shack's education program was quite comprehensive. And with that, I will leave you until next time when we take a look at the not quite successor to Network 2, Network 3, and say, raise a glass of your favorite beverage, adult or not, to this SepTANDY 2023, all things Tandy Radio Shack. Until next time, I'm TJBChris. Thank you for joining me.